Welcome to the Real Film Nerds Podcast.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Real Film Nerds Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Matt Hinshaw. Yep, I'll just leave it at that. Don't forget to follow us on the social medias everywhere at Real Film Nerds. On the Instagrams, the Twitters, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, whatever. Follow us, see what we're doing. We usually just post when we put out a podcast. But sometimes we post cool stuff. I don't know. Anyways, to my far, far east, my buddy on the East Coast, Mysterious Mike.
Hey, everybody.
All right, Mike, are you ready to hack the planet?
Yes, I am.
What movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about Hackers. And this is a legacy cast. This movie is from 1995. And its director is Ian Softley, writer Raphael Moriu. And it's starring John Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie, before she was anybody, Jesse Bradford, Matthew Lillard. And it's about a young boy is arrested by the U.S. Secret Service for writing a computer virus and is banned from using a computer until his 18th birthday. Years later, he and his newfound friends discover a plot to unleash a dangerous computer virus, but they must use their computer skills to find the evidence while being pursued by the Secret Service and the evil computer genius behind the virus.
All right, Mike, I know you're just itching to jump in and talk about this one. I don't even know if we should just warn people that we're going to spoil the hell out of this because it's so old, because we'll probably just get rolling and you're just going to talk and I'm going to just talk because we both are extremely passionate about this movie, even though it doesn't stand up well by today's standards. Go for it, Mike. How much do you love Hackers?
I really, really love Hackers. This movie, even though the visualizations for all the computer stuff is just absolutely ridiculous by today or any standards, really. As a 95, I was in high school. Are
you sure we were in high school in 95? Because
no,
dude,
we weren't.
We were in eighth grade.
We were in eighth grade. And as I saw this in 8th grade, it really just inspired me about computers.
Oh,
I wanted to do stuff with computers based on this kind of shitty representation of what computers do, like visually. But I wanted to do stuff with computers, and this helped drive me to my current career. Honestly, this movie changed my life without even me really knowing it. And, I love the music in it. I don't know. It embodied this cool, I guess just this coolness to me about technology. And I wanted to be like this, kind of. And so it really changed my life.
Do you know what else we got? I don't know if we got it in 95. It might have been 94. I think it was 94, maybe 93, but that was when this movie came out was around the time when we got the internet. At least I did at home.
Yeah, that was definitely, yes, it was definitely around the time we got the internet.
Because I got dial-up, good old-fashioned C2I2. I still remember.
Yeah, it was C2I2, our dial-up internet, 28.8, rocking it forever.
Yep. Got it in middle school. And so it was around when we saw this movie. I just realized that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was around when we saw this movie. And Matt and I were starting to do things that you shouldn't do on the internet very early on.
Yes.
And
we're not going to admit too much of that. We did a lot of things that, yeah. It's not as bad as the things as, the legitimate hackers do today, but back then it was similar to the things that they did in this movie, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. We were interested in finding out information about certain things. How about that?
Yeah, about everything we could. Is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I try to explain to people when they think like online gaming is new and, doing all these, file sharing and downloading movies and downloading music and downloading free games. And everyone thinks all that shit is new since, especially the younger generation. Oh, where are the millennials? We had all this stuff. No, all that shit was going around probably initially starting in, I would say, the late 80s, but you and I really heavily, took to it like fish to water. I mean, I remember calling you up on, screaming at my mom, "Mom, get off the phone. I'm playing with Mike. I'm playing Quake. Get off the phone, Ma."
Oh, yeah, no, I remember being furious with my parents for picking up the phone because we might have to give a little lesson here, Matt. So way back in the day, the internet used to work over your phone lines, and I know people don't even know what phone lines are, but we would dial into the internet and you would have a modem and all this stuff for the phone, and if someone tried to pick up the phone to call somebody, that would ruin your internet. And Matt and I would be playing a, online multiplayer kill 'em like first person shooter game like Quake. Quake we loved a lot.
Yes.
But we could have been playing other games,
Quake
but I remember
Doom
Quake was
or Wolfenstein 3D, but Quake seemed to be our go-to.
Yeah, Quake was our main game, and if your mom or your dad or anybody picked up the phone and you were on the internet, you were not on the internet anymore, and it was infuriating. So a lot of times Matt and I would be up late on the internet because no one in the house was awake, and so we would have time to do stuff. And, it kind of is conveyed like that in The Hackers, where they're up all night and all this stuff. And like, even in another movie that inspired me a lot kind of to go into technology was The Matrix. Keanu Reeves' character, Neo, is a programmer who's up all night making like hacker programs and sleeps all day, even though he should be working for his company. Like, all that stuff, like, it really kind of inspired me to be who I am now, which is kind of weird, a programmer guy, so.
Yeah, those were the good days, man. Those were good days. That was fun.
Yeah,
anyways.
No, I have a really special place in my heart for this movie. Now, it is very outdated.
Just to say it slightly. I mean, yeah. when you start hearing the specs on the computer, especially the super top end, high expensive laptop that Angelina Jolie's character has, and they're all like drooling over it, and they start rambling off the specs, you're like, oh man, wow. I think our toaster has more specs in it than that now.
Yeah, but yeah.
The other one too that people will have a hard time, especially the younger generation, on this one, and you were alluding to it earlier, is payphones. They use a lot of payphones, and they use the old modems, even older than the modems we had, where you actually take the handset and you stick it in the modem. And they use that.
Yeah, that was like the original kind of modem before we actually had like separate pieces of hardware.
Right.
Yeah.
But they even use it when it's not even so much that they use it because they have to. They use it because then they can use payphones to access stuff so that they're traced to payphones instead of to their houses.
Yeah, it was to keep up their anonymous dealings, right? They wanted to not be found for whatever they were doing, and because they knew they were doing things that were not okay.
Yeah, and they have banks and banks of payphones, and those just, you're lucky to find one anywhere. They just don't exist now. They just don't.
Right, and so there are things like that in this movie that are very dated, and so I guess I guess our views of this movie are somewhat jaded because watching this movie from the new, like, current perspective of what we expect, you'd be like, man, this movie's crappy. Like, what are these weird visualizations with going into computers and this weird thing that they're doing and, like, this, well, what did they call it? The Gibson?
Yeah, the Gibson.
Hacking the Gibson and all that stuff. Like, what is that? But it was a way that they were trying to convey to the common audience, like, what computer servers and all the stuff was. And it doesn't really hold up that well, but I still love the movie a lot. So,
well, and you know, one of my favorite things, and it's one of the very, very, very first hacks in the film, and this is still very true today from a hacker standpoint. What, Mike, you probably know this, but I'll still ask it anyways. What is the number one failure point in all hacking, no matter what it is, if it's credit cards, anything? What's the very first thing that is the easiest thing to fail?
Password?
Nope. It is the human element. The very first hack. The very first hack. Dade Murphy calls into a television station and says he's forgot his modem phone number or whatever, and gets the security guard to go up there, look at the phone number so that he could dial into it, and he reads it off to him. It doesn't matter how good it doesn't matter how good your security is, how good your firewall is, how good anything is, if that human element is still there and doesn't know better.
Yeah, no, that's still very alive and well today. And in fact, the big hacker convention that they have in Vegas called, I think, DEF CON.
There's a couple of them, but yeah, one of the biggest ones is DEF CON. Yeah.
Yeah. They illustrate how people using what they call, I guess, human engineering, or I think they call it human engineering or people engineering, where you talk your way into getting to things like you just said, the modem phone number or just whatever. Like, you're like, hey, you know, I'm the vice president of whatever, and I forgot this thing, and I need to get this thing. Can you help me with this thing? And almost always everyone's like, oh yeah, I can help you with whatever. Because all you need to do is say the right words and say the right phrases, and you can do it.
Yep.
I think they call it human engineering, where you just, but you have to be smart enough to know the right things to say. Otherwise, everyone's like, no, this doesn't sound right, and then they hang up or whatever. So, like, you have to know enough about whatever the thing is that you're trying to get to. But if you do, you are very dangerous because you can talk your way kind of into it. So
right, and you can never get around that. And as long as human beings are still involved in this technological world, you'll never get around it. And I love that, because that's the very first hack in this movie is that.
Yeah. No. Yeah, you're right.
And so, anyways, before we get off topic too much, Mike, let's go ahead and do it. I know this was a more difficult one than usual, but Mike, how does hackers relate to the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Well, thanks for asking, Matt. Yeah, this one was a little bit more difficult. It wasn't any of the main stars. But we have a stunt actor, Jennifer Badger, was also in Iron Man 3 and Captain America Winter Soldier.
Nice. All right. So, Mike, let's I could talk about this all day, but here's some interesting things that I did. I'm trying to be good and improve our podcast, and I took notes while I was watching this. I'm half tempted to bring my notebook into the movie theater and take notes from here on out if this helps.
Oh wow!
But,
Okay, all right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll see.
let's go for it. What are you feeling?
There was lots of things that impacted both of our lives. 95 was a good year. If you remember, I even talked about it at your wedding. 95 was the first year you and I went to a concert together.
Oh,
that was the year we went and saw Bush. But anyways, the music in this movie, I know you and I thumped it a lot, especially in high school, but the majority of the songs were Prodigy.
Oh yeah, and this movie introduced me or us to Prodigy. I don't think I would have heard of Prodigy without this movie.
And here's some more off topic. This will be fun. Do you remember what your very first handle was when in the internet? I remember mine. I remember yours because you actually sent me a birthday wish in high school using your, I guess you would say, hacker handle back then. Do you remember what it was, Mike?
I think it's Acid Burn Durden.
Nope. That's your current one on Xbox, though.
Damn it. Crash Override?
Nope. Your one from high school was Voodoo, but you remember you spelled it different?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that because you and I kept that secret like all day. And it was back when we were in high school. They had TVs that were scrolling all the time with like bulletins and shit going on, and they had a birthday part, and you could pay at the office like $1 or $2 or something, and then they would put a birthday wish. And I never got one of those ever. And Mike did one for me on my birthday, and it was my hacker name, which I still kind of use a little bit, but not really. It was Alien X, and I had 3 dashes. And then your hacker name, which was Voodoo, and you put Happy Birthday Alien X from Voodoo. And no one knew what it was, and no one could figure it out. And then we explained it to everyone a little bit later, and everybody thought we were big dorks.
We were big dorks, but that's okay, man. It was fun.
But I remember nobody could pronounce it because, you instead of doing V with the 2 O's, you did 1 O. And everybody's like, Vodo? What the hell is Vodo? But do you remember where you got your name from?
Was it from the Prodigy song?
Voodoo.
Did they have one?
The Prodigy song Voodoo People, which is a song in Hackers.
Yes. Yeah.
So that just shows you how ingrained our lives really were with this movie. Like we were talking about earlier about how one of the scenes, Lord Nikon opens the door and is ripping the main character, Dade Murphy, apart about, how he's not an elite hacker and all this stuff. And he's like, what, did your mommy and daddy get you a pewter for Christmas? And still to this day, I refer to computers as pewters just to drive people nuts.
Oh, man, nice. And, well, like you were just saying, my current Xbox username is Acid Burn Durden.
Yep.
Well, Acid Burns from this movie, and it's Tyler Durden from
Fight Club.
Fight Club. So it's like a mashup of that. Those movies were so influential in my life.
Well,
that's what I...
And then you can think of mine kind of like, well, great. Now I'm going to maybe I'll actually get some friends to play with on Xbox now. I know you don't play anymore, you jerk. I'm going to have to get you an Xbox.
I might get an Xbox, but I don't know.
Dude, I have almost bought you one multiple times. I seriously was going to get you one for your wedding gift if I would have had more money. But I also think Mags probably would have killed me. Hey, I gave you enough money that you could buy like half of an Xbox.
No, it's fine, Matt. I will figure it out. We will likely get an Xbox soon.
Because seriously, dude, Red Dead Redemption 2 is freaking ridiculous. It is ridiculous. That game is so much fun.
Well, according to South Park, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Oh, but anyways, my current username on Xbox, and I thought this up, and I didn't realize it, but it also kind of takes its roots from Hacker as well. There's a character in Hackers. His hacker name is Serial Killer. Cereal as in the breakfast food. So Cereal. And I didn't even think of this, but I came up with my new user handle when I was in college. I still used Alien X for a long time, but then when I signed up for PlayStation Online and Xbox Online, I don't remember why I didn't use Alien X, but maybe it wasn't long enough or something. So I came up with something that's very related to my profession, and that is paparazzi killer. So it's a lot like serial killer, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. No. Matt, before we were recording, you were saying how this movie just reminded you of so many like good things. Like what else do you have to talk about about that? Because you're like, wow, I didn't realize I got all the stuff from this movie.
Well, I've pointed out some, like, my username and, stuff like that. The music of Prodigy. This movie is very, very 90s. And I remember you and I didn't dress as crazy as some of these people did in high school. We kind of had our own style, mostly the band shirts and jeans and stuff. But I mean, I think I probably took having a chain wallet directly from this movie, because they have chain wallets all over the place in this,
Yeah, I might have done that too. Like for the most part, I wasn't what I would consider too trendy. But yes, I also got the chain wallet and was excited to have that. So yeah, that was probably from this movie. I had the chain wallet. I don't know if I still have that chain wallet, which kind of depresses me.
Yeah, well, you had a cool one. Mine wallet was No Fear chain wallet, I think.
Yeah, no, I had one that I made myself, like with leather and stuff. It was cool. I don't think I have that. Damn it. Anyway, doesn't matter.
One thing that's kind of neat about this movie is this is like a true, very nerdy movie if you pay attention. I didn't really notice it until this most recent watch through, but there's lots of little nerdy things in the background. There's lots of call outs to comic books. There's lots of call outs to other movies. Some of the names that are used, like I didn't even realize that, Lord Nikon was based off of Nikon cameras. I didn't even put two and two together until I saw this one. I'm like, God, I'm an idiot.
Well,
but again, back then, I knew about Nikon because I've always been in the photography world, but I just never thought, why would a hacker want to use Nikon? But whatever, and then, there's Apple IIs all over the place, which is interesting. They use Apple IIs for hacking.
Yeah, no, that was interesting, especially coming from now. Like, watching it just recently, you're like, oh.
But even in 95, an Apple II would have been a pretty old computer.
Yeah, but they were really flexible and they were really versatile. So I think that's some of the stuff. And they would have been cheap.
And another thing that was interesting that they had in this movie was a little going back to the public phone system. They had a little thing known as phreaking that's spelled with a PH, and a lot of people don't know what phreaking is today. Us old people do, but phreaking is basically using your wits to outsmart the phone company. And they have a very good example of that where back in the day in the payphones, if you put in quarters, it would make tones letting the operator or whoever know that you put in the right amount of money. Well, if you recorded those tones and played them back into the phone, you could use it. And guess who's... This will be fun for those of you who are tech people. You probably know this, but guess who first was introduced into the world of technology when they were in college by experimenting with phreaking?
Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak from Apple.
Damn it, Mike! Of course you would know that, but yeah, that's where Woz and Jobs really first started getting interested in technology, was with phreaking.
Yeah, so they figured out that if you made... So, ironically, I believe it's the Cracker Jack whistle that was included. If you bought enough Cracker Jacks, you could get a whistle. It had the exact frequency to go to a phone system, and if you blew that, you could dial any number, and it was free. There was no long distance. Everything was free. It was like the engineering frequency. And Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak went and looked into, of course, because they grew up in like Silicon Valley. They went to the library, and right in the library is a spec of the phone system, which is crazy anyway. But they went and looked into the phone system, and they saw, oh yeah, if you do this frequency, that totally allows you to do anything you want. And they were allowed to call anywhere in the world, and did. And then they were like, Steve Jobs pushed Steve Wozniak to be like, hey, we need to sell this. And they sold it for a little bit until some things kind of went weird. And somebody, I don't know, there was some violence or something that tried to happen. And then they stopped doing it. But anyway, it's just really interesting to see that stuff in a movie. And it's so influential, like that kind of spark for Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak didn't quite start Apple, but a little bit after that they did. So it's kind of crazy.
It brought them together for sure.
Yeah, no, it did
because they were both very passionate about it. Yeah,
Steve Wozniak was a few years older than Steve Jobs, like 3 or 4 years. And so it was, it brought them together for sure.
Another thing this movie has a lot of throwouts to is music. There's references to The Clash. There's references to Ozzy Osbourne. Serial Killer even quotes Ozzy Osbourne in this movie. I hate to say it's so responsible for at least a large chunk of our, growing up years. But it was, man. It was. A lot of it really was.
No, I point to this movie a lot. This movie and The Matrix, man, they really shaped kind of the way that I chose to go in my life. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you look back on it. Like, what 2 movies changed the way that you were going to do your life? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm huge into tech, but I tried to pursue it as a career and it didn't work out. So maybe I'll have to try it again someday. I don't know. We'll see. But last one, I guess, before we get too much off topic, but pretty much this whole podcast has been off topic.
Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah. Sorry.
It's interesting how the opening scene is the main character as an 11-year-old kid sitting in a courtroom getting charged. Charged for crashing 1,507 systems in one day.
Yeah, computer crimes or whatever.
Right,
yeah.
And he got 7 years probation, was not allowed to touch a computer or a phone until his 18th birthday. Now today, in beautiful 2018, there are exploits and hacks, and some done by the companies, some not, where millions of people's data is crashed or sent out or sold or whatever. And how many times have you really heard of any repercussions from any of it?
I think a lot of times with the hacks now, it's not a single person and it's not something that they can tie to a single thing.
Right,
but you're right.
Still,
I don't know. You're right. I don't hear of anybody usually getting like, this hack. There was just a hack of Marriott just this weekend, or they just released that it happened this weekend. 500,000 people or something.
Right.
I mean, ridiculous, right? Huge hack.
But my thing is I think Marriott. See, we're gonna get real techie on here, but I think the company that is responsible for holding that data should be held responsible for letting this happen. Or maybe not letting it happen, but having it happen to them. They should be able to pay enough people to keep their system secure so shit like this doesn't happen. At least not in this wide of a volume.
Yeah, no,
Target,
I don't know,
Home
man.
Depot,
no,
Marriott.
Jeez, yeah, no,
I mean, that's millions of people's of information.
Yeah, just in the last 5 years, I've had my debit card stolen 6 times. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say, dude. I don't know.
I don't want to get too techy about it, but someone needs to be held responsible for this. I mean, Google, is responsible for lots and lots of information, and to this day, they haven't had a massive breach like any of these other companies have. Maybe they should be taking a lesson from Google. Maybe they should putting more money into their cybersecurity.
Well, look at what was it, Experian?
Oh my God.
Credit bureau lost everybody's stuff, and the person who's in charge doesn't even know how to use a computer.
Right,
Are
and
you
the router,
kidding me?
and the whole reason. And the what's even more depressing, they really should have been held responsible for that. The main password to access their network was still the default password.
Ugh.
How stupid can you be?
No, that one is. Oh,
maybe I should go into the world of tech because I could replace 90% of those freaking idiots. Sure, I might not want to be able to program, but I know enough not to use the default freaking password on a goddamn router.
Well, yeah. All of tech doesn't mean programming, man. There's other jobs, but anyway, that's outside of the podcast. Matt, how many reels do you give Hackers?
All right, I want to give it a 5, but I can't because this movie just does not age well. 8th grade, 1995, Matt Hinshaw would give it a 5 out of 5. But this is 2018. Crotchety old curmudgeon Matt Hinshaw. I give it 4 out of 5 reels because I still freaking love this movie no matter how goofy or dated it is. I still love it. And, you get to see Angelina Jolie naked.
Damn it, Matt. That's exactly what I was going to do. Yes, this movie does not age well, but I love it so much because we saw it in a time in our lives where it was very meaningful and it was awesome. And so I give it a 4 reels out of 5 as well. And, I don't know if everybody should see this movie because I don't know if it would add too much to your lives. But for Matt and I, this was a very influential movie. So if you kind of want to see some kind of fun, interesting views on tech from 1995, this is the movie to see. But it's not a great movie. It's I love the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack, but it's I don't know.
Well, and what's interesting too is that this is only 95, and they're granted today. The nudity of Angelina Jolie would be considered a nip slip by today's standards, but still, this is a PG-13 movie, and it has a little bit of nudity and it has some violence in it, not a lot. But it kind of...
I wouldn't say, very light violence.
It's still, by today's standards, would probably be rated R just purely based on the nudity, I would think.
Yes, no, it would be. It's actually surprising that it was PG-13 there's just a teeny nude scene in it. I mean, it's not much.
No, it's literally if you blink,
it's like
if you blink,
seconds.
you miss it. Yeah, it's not much anything.
But the fact that there was any nudity and it was PG-13, they wouldn't do that at all now.
Right. I seriously had to look up the rating because I thought it was R, just by today's standards.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how today you can cut people's heads off, disembowel people, all kinds of stuff. And it'll be PG-13 all day long. You show, 1 iota of nudity, and it's rated R. Or you drop more than 1 F-bomb, and it's rated R. I don't know, man. We got it. That's for another podcast topic, but we got it ass backwards, if you ask me, on some of that stuff. Not that I don't love my violence, believe me, I do. But...
yeah, no, it's definitely gotten weird out there.
I'm really interested to see this PG-13 Once Upon a Deadpool, basically Deadpool 2. I'm really interested to see that and how violent it is, because I bet you it's going to be pretty freaking violent for a PG-13 movie.
Yeah, I just saw the trailer for that, Matt.
Which one? They have two now.
I was super excited because I didn't know a Deadpool movie was coming out, and it's like Once Upon a Deadpool, PG-13. I was like, yes, please.
Oh, I love how they're telling it Princess Bride style with Fred Savage. That's so funny.
Oh yeah, no, I love it.
And they even allude to that in the trailer where they're like, Fred Savage is the only F word we're using in this one. It's funny.
Yeah, no, it looks awesome, but
it's only going to be out for 2 weeks, so that's one we're going to have to hustle on.
Oh, dude, I'll go see it opening week. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do you want to talk about, Matt?
I don't know. I love this movie. It might not be your movie, but I love Hackers. You should, if you like technology or you just like goofy ass movies, go see this.
Yeah, I think if you grew up before there was the internet and you kind of saw the rise of the internet, you would kind of enjoy this movie. If you've had the internet your whole life, you might think this movie is just dumb.
Yeah, I think my nephews would probably not get a big kick out of this.
So, I we understand. But for Matt and I, this was a really influential movie, and we loved it. And anyway, I think that's all we can talk about it. And thanks for listening, and we'll catch us on our next pod.
Thank you for listening to The Real Film Nerds. Now don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Real Film Nerds. Now go out and catch a movie.